Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY!
A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn Emmy winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody, welcome aboard. Thanks a lot for being with us on this Monday. It is October 23rd. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you from high atop the 18th fairway of the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. And right off the bat, joined by our good friend Greg Rakestraw from the ISC Sports Network, where you can find it easily at the iscsportsnetwork.com. Greg, welcome aboard. I know you're a busy man, as we all are. You've got high school playoffs that are underway. You've got the Colts duties that you handle, and I guess we'll go backwards closer to the Colts yesterday with a daggone tough game. Every time I'm trying to watch it and run downstairs and do some things, and I'm like, they got it. And you come back, I'm like, what the hell? But man, it was an exciting game to watch. Just did not come out on the side of the Colts. But one thing I have to say, boy, they have to be loving this 1-2 punch of Mr. Moss and having Jonathan Taylor back, because Jonathan Taylor looking like he came back ready to play a great game for him. I don't know what his stats were, but just from seeing some of the plays he made, you can tell it's good to have a guy like that back.
Well, to your point, Jim, he had 18 carries for 75 yards yesterday, 3 catches for 45 yards, 21 touches, 120 yards. And I thought there was a significant difference in terms of how he played yesterday versus the first 2 weeks of the season. You know, he looked kind of like he was back in midseason form. So, you know, what the Colts did yesterday, again, sometimes the stats will lie to you. They put up 456 yards and 38 points against the top-rated defense in the National Football League, and it still wasn't enough. So you are right. It was a tremendous game. You didn't have a rooting interest. You loved watching that game. Heartbreaking for the Colts in that still too many turnovers, and obviously a couple of very questionable whistles at the end of that game that may have been the deciding factor. And that stinks that that's the case. And I've been doing the post-game show for 12 years, and I'm not sure I've led the post-game show by basically saying, hey, these 2 whistles determine the outcome of the game, but they really did. Good news is for the Colts, there's a lot of season left to go. They're 3-4. The schedule is not overly challenging. The Colts have a third-place schedule. They also have the luck of the draw that the AFC South plays the NFC South this year, which is kind of equally average. And the Colts start playing a lot of those teams, in fact, as soon as next week with the New Orleans Saints on the schedule. So disappointing loss, but not the end of the world for the Indianapolis Colts.
And this may not be correct, but for some reason it seems to me, Greg, we seem to see officials making bigger miscues than what we see in college, which I don't know how that could be possible. But I think back of some calls. I mean, whether you go back to a few years ago, I think it was the Saints and the Rams where there was the obvious pass interference.
Sure.
But it just gigantic calls that I'm like going, how do these guys get these calls that bad at that level? And I just shrug my shoulders, because you don't want to ever blame officials for calls. But
right.
Hey, the reality of it is it happens. And yesterday was a good example of that.
I am very reticent to put blame of game on an official. And at the same time, because when those 2 whistles happened, it's easier to do it. At the same time, if the Colts played better the last 3 minutes of the first half and play calling's a bit different, they hang on to the football, pick up a first down, maybe you and I aren't having this conversation. The game isn't put in those hands. So, yes, there is always something you can do differently. At the same time, I am a very major proponent of being able to challenge penalty calls. And the example that I cite, if you ever watch the Canadian Football League, you ever watch the CFL, and my guess is your best chance to do that as an American is when you're needing that football fix in late July, early August. By the time the NFL preseason starts, you've kind of moved on. But you can challenge pass interference there. And you referenced that Saints-Rams playoff game from a few years back. There was the one year that the NFL put in the protocol that you could challenge a pass interference call, but clearly there was also an unwritten rule or directive handed out that's saying it had to be the most egregious of calls for you to actually overturn it. Let's face it, all right? On the ball in the end zone, where Darrell Baker did grab the receiver for Cleveland, he absolutely grabbed him, okay? But what was called was pass interference. Well, in pass interference, it has to be a catchable ball. I referenced this gentleman on the postgame show yesterday. The late Minute Bowl would not have been able to grab that ball. That thing was nearly in the first row of the stands. P.J. Walker overthrew it so much. If you wanted to call holding on that play, okay, that's fine. Now you've got the ball at the 4-yard line or the 3-yard line and not the 1-yard line. And it is a completely different set of play calls, downs, etc. That call was really bad. And again, I think if you could properly challenge a pass interference call, then maybe that call gets changed. And again, we're having a different conversation this morning.
And then I also have to look and say the Colts are, I don't want to use the word fortunate because they're all working hard, but they're on their backup quarterback with Gardner Minshew.
Sure.
And to be able to be in this position, in these positions, the Browns, as crazy as it is for me to say this, are one of the better teams in the NFL this year. Shockingly, they played well, but there have been a couple of times now, the Rams game or the Colts have been so close to beating teams that they were not expected to probably beat. And we're easily looking at a team that is 5-2 right now on the year. And that would be very surprising because this is probably where people thought they would be at 3-4, but they could have very easily been a 5-2 team right now.
You get a lot of NFL teams, though, that would say that, Jim, and that's kind of the nature of the National Football League. You know, and even the great teams this year, I'm not so sure are so great. I mean, there's some weeks the Buffalo Bills look phenomenal. They're a game over 500. They just got beat by what was a one-win Patriots team. You know, I'm a firm believer that now, usually most years, there are 2 or 3 teams you kind of point to and say, those teams are the goods. Clearly, the Philadelphia Eagles are one of those teams. They got beat the week before. You know, the Bears have been miserable. They won by 18 points yesterday for their second win of the season. Only the Panthers are left as a winless team. So basically, Jim, that's every Sunday in the National Football League. Now, to your point, are the Indianapolis Colts a better football team than I thought they would be when we were talking about this team in training camp? Absolutely. They have more pieces in place than I probably gave them credit for. And again, that's what makes the remainder of the schedule, you know, so appealing for this football team. Let's just take it in a microcosm, okay? The next 3 games before the bye. The New Orleans Saints are very similar to the Colts in terms of I think they can be competitive in every game. Nothing is a guaranteed win, but every game is winnable. Then you get to the 0-6 Panthers. Then you get to the 2-5 Patriots. Then you get to the bye, and then you have more teams from both the AFC South as well as the NFC South. There are still a lot of possible wins for this football team. So I'm not sure they're going to catch Jacksonville atop the division. And going into the year, we all thought Jacksonville was kind of clearly the best team in the AFC South, and it's turning out to be that way through 7 weeks. But could this still be a 9 or 10 win team that's a playoff team? Absolutely. And Jim, I think every Colts fan would have signed up for that if you had said that was the possibility back in August.
Greg, as a man of many hats, as I said, and the ISC Sports Network, where you can find that at iscsportsnetwork.com. High school football playoffs have begun. 5A and down. 6A begins this week. But the ISC Sports Network is always your place to go for playoff action. Anything surprise you over the weekend? Were you pulling double duties this weekend?
So obviously Friday night, you had the 1A through 4A, games. The 5As and 6As get the weekend off, and they get kind of thrown into the mix as of this Friday. And there are huge games all across the state. I think I got the best one in terms of Brownsburg and Ben Davis in number 1 versus number 3. Similar scenario exists in 5A, of course, with Bloomington North and Bloomington South, and Bloomington North, trying to win a sectional game for their sectional championship for the first time in a decade. I think I looked this up. I think those two schools have played 12 times in the postseason over the years. I think Bloomington North has won 2 of them, if I've got that correct. So, can they sweep South? That's a big game. Also in 5A, Plainfield and Harrison play each other in the opening round for a second consecutive year. Those two teams have been top 10 teams for most of the year. Plainfield's hit the skids a little bit under first-year head coach Tyler Bless the last couple of weeks. The game that I had this past Friday night was Greenfield Central and Pembroke Heights, 2 of the top teams in 4A. Greenfield Central won that one 27-17. There's always a couple of smaller upsets, especially maybe in Class 1A or 2A. But, for a lot of folks, the big schools, the postseason begins now. And so now let's see if these rankings hold up coming into week number 2 on Friday.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I have to tell you, the 6A has been just fun because virtually every team in that class is good no matter what, especially the top half. What game is coming up for you guys this week do you have?
So Ben Davis and Brownsburg is our big game. So that'll be on ihsatv.org. Those are all free streams during the course of the sectional round and of the regional round of the tournament. But again, that's number 1 versus number 3. And those two teams had opened with each other the last several seasons. For whatever reason, that game was not continued this year. Ben Davis ended up landing Cincinnati Moeller on their schedule, went to Cincinnati and beat them. Moeller, a regional power, year in, year out. Moeller suffered 3 losses to schools from Indiana this year. They were beaten by Ben Davis, beaten by Center Grove, and East Central got them 2 back in week number 2 or week number 3 of the season. For East Central is clearly one of the favorites in 4A, along with Wrights, and those two teams seem destined to face each other in the semi-state round of the tournament, which would be a game that have a lot of eyeballs across the state of Indiana, if it works out to be that way. So, it's funny. Ben Davis, Brownsburg, and Center Grove, they have not all played each other, but Ben Davis has played the other 2 in weeks 1 and weeks 4 in years gone by, did not play either of those 2 teams this year. So those 3 teams are a combined 25-2. The losses are Center Grove losing at or in Ohio in the season opener to St. Edwards of Cleveland, who's one of the top teams in the nation. Ben Davis lost to IMG. That is the game that replaced Center Grove on Ben Davis's schedule. They kind of had a one-off opportunity to play IMG, took advantage of it. I did that game. Ben Davis held their own, against a team that is made up of players from all across the nation. It was a 3-score game, but Ben Davis was a player or 2 away from making it a 1-score game, midway through the 3rd quarter. So these are 3 really good football teams, and unfortunately, one of those teams will go home at the conclusion of business on Friday night.
I talk about this, well, not all the time, but we've had plenty of discussions with Kyle Neddenripp from the Indy Star about seeding the tournaments, whether it's football or basketball, and there's why it's difficult and this, that, and the other thing. But what are your thoughts on seeding these sectionals or regionals, wherever they would start? But I hate seeing 2 of the great. I remember a couple of years ago being a Southern Indiana guy like yourself when New Albany, Floyd Central, Jeffersonville, and basketball were like all in the top 6, but they were all in the same sectional, and I'm like, oh, right. That really sucks to have that much power getting kicked out. But I would just there's got to be somehow a way to do this where it's relatively, I don't want to call it easy, but doable.
What I would say, Jim, is this: there are 2 different questions that you got to answer first, and then I'll kind of walk you through the process of how potentially it would change. So the first question you'd have to answer is, and I think it is frankly easier to seed either a 6-team sectional in basketball or volleyball, baseball, softball, or even a 7 or 8-team sectional in a smaller class than it is to seed a 4A section or a 4-team sectional like you have in 5 and 6A football. So basically, if you're Ben Davis and Brownsburg, the way the sectionals align, the other 2 teams in their sectional are Avon and Pike, so it makes geographic sense. You're going to have 32 teams. You divide them, 8 sectionals of 4. You start in the northwest corner of the state and work your way down. it makes sense that these 4 schools geographically are closer to each other. So seeding a 4-team sectional, we're having an argument, do you want to play them in week 1 or week number 2? And I think the coaches would tell you, you know what? Give us the bye week to prepare for them. Give me 2 weeks to focus on that team. In a 4-team sectional, I'm not sure seeding is that necessary or frankly would be all that important. The other question, and this would be for the ADs, principals, superintendents, et cetera. Are you willing to add to your travel time and travel costs to not play teams necessarily in your backyard? Do you say, hey, we're going to seed within the regional or the semi-state, but that means you're adding time away from campus and you're adding, dollars, from a travel standpoint. If the answer both those 2 things are yes, then the process would be the Coaches Association. In this point, in this case, the IFCA, going to the IHSAA and really asking for a change in the tournament. And Jim, that would be the impetus to making that happen. So I wouldn't be opposed to it, but there's a lot of different questions have to be answered and kind of layers that have to be peeled back for that to ever happen.
Greg Rakestraw from the ISC Sports Network. Just go to iscsportsnetwork.com for complete coverage on IHSA sports and more. Greg, thank you, sir. We appreciate you. Look forward to seeing you next week.
You got it, Jim. Take care.
You as well, buddy. Up next, the great Don Fischer joins us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, live coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. Whew, that's a lot to squeeze in. Donald, how are you?
Better than our football team.
Yep. Oh man, I was going to try to think of a way of not even asking a football question, but it's not possible.
Well, yeah. Then you want to go to basketball. We get to talk about Mackenzie and Baco.
I was just getting ready to say the only other thing would be, have you been to Taco Bell lately?
Yeah. I've never been to a Taco Bell in my life, believe it or not.
Is that really?
Never have been to a Taco Bell. Have no idea what their food tastes like. I heard
that's crazy.
Everybody's no, it's not.
Well, it's not crazy. I don't like Taco Bell myself, but the fact that you've never even been to one is crazy.
Do you like Mexican food?
I like it occasionally. I mean, it's not like I go.
Well, that explains it. It.
I like Mexican food, okay, but what I do like about Mexican food is I like quesadillas. I love those. I've never heard Taco Bell promote a quesadilla, so I don't know if they even have them.
I will tell you, they seem to have the slowest service. So, not that I'm taking up for Mackenzie and Baco, but that's the one thing I'm like, don't go through the Taco Bell drive-through. Gee whiz, it'll take you forever.
You think that's the reason he got in trouble?
I think that's it. He was sitting there forever, and they didn't wait. He's like, damn it.
Well, obviously alcohol must not have been involved because they didn't arrest him for drinking or anything like that.
I was going to say there's no drinking, which is on one hand great, on the other hand shocking, because I'm like, how the hell?
What are you doing at 2:30 in the morning, right? What are you doing at 2:30 in the morning at a Taco Bell anyway? That's my question.
If there or White Castle, I would have understood both of those, but when a cop tells you for 15 minutes to leave, you're going to be arrested and you're not drunk, what the hell is wrong with you?
I know.
He's calling the bluff, I guess, even though he wasn't bluffing.
Well, here's what you have to understand. There are players who have been entitled their entire lives.
Bam.
And when that happens, they think that nothing's going to happen to them. They're going to take care of me, blah, blah, blah. It's just like silliness. And unfortunately, and he probably is looking at it like, well, this is ridiculous that they've arrested me, and I want to go, no, it's not ridiculous, you dummy. I mean, think about it.
10 seconds.
Go online to set your tee time or call 812-824-4040. The Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Monday, and that means Don Fischer joins us. Appreciate you, sir. How are you? How was your weekend after Saturday?
Well, actually, we went to a birthday party after the ball game up in Franklin, so that was fun. And then yesterday, went down to the foul course and participated in their. They had a special day for their employees and for members of the golf course, that kind of thing. And they had a par 3, 9-hole par 3 tournament. They basically set up stakes out there, in par 3 territory,
right,
for this little event, and played a 9-hole little par 3 tournament. Got to play golf. My wife went down with me, and we played golf together with another gentleman on our team. And we didn't finish in the money, which we didn't care. It was just fun to be out there on the golf course on a beautiful, beautiful fall day.
I'm telling, this weekend was absolutely amazing from a weather standpoint. I just assumed you're going to say you won, because I was like, that's taking candy from a baby for Don.
No,
it's just par 3, man.
Actually, I actually hit the ball better than I was anticipating that I would, because I haven't played hardly at all since football got underway. But nevertheless, we had a great time. It was fun. And you're playing that golf course. You're not playing it from the tee box. So you always feel a lot better about that. You're hitting shots from 120 to 150 yards in. So that was really good.
Yeah, there is a big difference there. I guess we'll start with football. Indiana had a weekend in which they were playing a team that on paper looked like a straight up match, but Rutgers, they have been playing well. And not only that, they were one game from bowl eligibility. So obviously they were playing not too bad at 4-2 coming into the game. Greg Schiano's squad had nothing about them had looked great, but nothing had looked terrible. They were a very mediocre, but I'm struggling with the words I'm trying to look for, manageable team. And that's what they did against Indiana. They managed their offense. They managed their defense.
Well, they managed it from a standpoint. They basically controlled the football the entire game. They had it for almost 38 minutes in this contest. Indiana had it for like 22. Yep. And I think Indiana got wore down defensively in this ball game because of their offense, just leaning on them the entire contest. That's 80-yard touchdown run by Gavin Wimsatt. That can't happen. That was just a mistake. Obviously, it happened in the second half, and I think part of that was due to fatigue on the defensive side of it, because Indiana just didn't have the ball very much on offense, not nearly enough. They were down 17-14 at halftime, so they were still very much in the ball game. But the special teams mistakes that they had in the first half killed them. Obviously, a block punt, and everybody could see it was going to be blocked because they were trying to adjust to whatever Rutgers was trying to do out there. And you had somebody sitting there coming up, moving a guy here or moving a guy there. And the next thing you know, they snap the ball and the punt gets blocked and it goes for a touchdown. That was the start of the negative things that happened in this ball game. Then you had a muff punt by Jalen Lucas that sets up another score for Rutgers at the end of the first half, which gives them momentum going into the locker room. So you're down 17-14 at halftime, still very much in the football game. And then the same thing that happened in the very first quarter of the contest, a long drive by Rutgers to start the second half, and your team looks demoralized. And that's what bothers me the most about this ball club, because at Indiana University, I have seen this for years. A team goes out there, plays hard, all of a sudden something negative happens, and you start to see things start to spiral negatively. And man, did it ever happen on Saturday? Absolutely, it did once again. No question about it. And again, special teams mistakes started that whole trend.
Yeah, and that is not, unfortunately, that's not something that just popped up. Special teams have been pretty much horrific this season all year long. It has been a thorn in Indiana's side, where in previous years it was one of the things that they could kind of lean on because they seem to have a control on it, but they've just been horrible on special teams over this course of this season. And this is not a team that is built to have that kind of an undercurrent. Even you can't blame a muff punt on anybody other than the person who muffs the punt, but all these other things are just mistakes that were made, and that has been a season-long situation.
Here's the thing too. Two other mistakes that were made in that ball game from a special teams perspective were the gunners not getting down to down punts. I mean, a 66-yard punt by James Evans, a 70-yard punt into the wind by James Evans, and the gunners didn't even come close to getting down there to down the football. Where were they in this contest? So, and I blame special teams on a couple of other occasions this year. James Evans didn't punt the ball last week very well, but he was hurt. I mean, people didn't know that, but he was dealing with an injury of some kind, and they still felt like he could punt the ball, and they allowed him to do that. And he just didn't punt it very well against Michigan. But this past week he was phenomenal. So that's
for most of the season he's been a bright spot. I said that yesterday. He has been. He could probably leave early for the NFL. He has been. I mean, he's been getting plenty of practice, but he has been booming some kicks this year. And if you can punt 170 yards, you're going to get somebody's attention.
Yeah, no question. And that was into the wind. I mean, the wind was blowing into him on that punt, that 70-yarder, which just astounded me that nobody got down there because it was a high and a great punt. It was not just a line drive.
What I noticed, Don, instantly, it was all three. There was three gunners that got down to the receiver, but they were all watching the receiver. No one had any clue where the ball was, and he played them like a fiddle because the ball was 10, 12 yards over his head, and he was just pretending like he was going to catch it. And boy, that ball was like bam, and whoop, into the end zone it goes. So he played them like a fiddle. They were not paying attention to where the ball itself was at all.
And which is hard to do because you're running down the field trying to chase that thing and chase whoever is going to run. And I'm sure that they're taught to make sure you keep an eye on the guy that's returning it to see what he's doing out there. But at the same time, one or two of the other guys should have been headed right to that end zone, trying to make sure that they got down there in plenty of time, which they should have been able to do, and they did not. I don't know if they got blocked at the line of scrimmage or whatever case took place, because I haven't seen any replays of it. All I know is that they didn't get there on either one of those two punts, and that flips the field.
Oh, absolutely. From a rushing or offensive standpoint, Indiana's offense was very balanced, but it just was not very productive. 126 yards passing, 153 yards rushing, as opposed to the 276 yards rushing alone by Rutgers, which is just 3 yards short of what Indiana's entire output was. But they're just not productive enough on either side of the ball.
Well, it brings up the quarterback situation with Brendan Sorsby being the quarterback for the entire ball game, and I have no problem with that. I like the fact that they didn't flip-flop quarterbacks in this contest. But Brendan had a very nice first quarter, and then he wasn't nearly as sharp the rest of the ball game from a throwing standpoint. He had too many throws behind guys or away from the guy. I didn't think he was as sharp as he needed to be in the throwing scenario after the first period. Because I think he completed 5 of 7 in the early going, something like that.
Yeah, he was rolling,
and helped the team get down the field. His ability to run the football, I thought, was excellent again. So that's another thing you got to take into consideration as a positive. Trent Holland was tremendous in the ball game when he came in there. That kid needs to be on the football field, in my opinion. I'm not saying he needs to carry the ball every single time or anything like that, but there's no doubt the last 2 weeks he has proven he deserves more playing time than he's getting at this point, and especially in a ball game like this where they're leaning on you with their running game. You could lean on him with their running game because he didn't get stopped for a loss in this contest. He was
average 6 yards.
Exactly. So I don't know why. And I don't want to get off on this tangent again because last year I was really ticked that Josh Henderson didn't get more.
I was getting ready to bring that up very next, man. Where was Josh Henderson?
Well,
everything I've heard that he was ready to go yesterday, though.
Well, that may have been the case, but they didn't use him. He was listed as questionable. Maybe they're just trying to make sure that he gets back as healthy as he can possibly be before they put him in there. But at the same time, the biggest problem with this football team, in my opinion, right now, is their mental frame of mind. If they don't get their heads on straight here for the next 5 weeks, this is going to be a dismal ending to this football season that still has the potential of getting to a bowl game if they win 4 out of the next 5. And we know this week coming up is not going to be one of those. So they're going to have to probably win 4 straight. And if they get pounded in this game against Penn State like they did against Michigan, I think there's absolutely no chance that Indiana is going to pull it out.
Yeah, because I mentioned that you've got 5 games left. Normally, 4 of those would be considered winnable. Penn State is not one of those by any measure. But after you continue to lose, like you just said, you don't have to know about injuries or whatever. Then that puts you in a situation you have to win out. Well, you haven't won 4 straight games in, I don't know, 4 years probably. So what are the chances of that? Number one. But we'll find out how that goes, as it's not looking good there. I would be remiss if I do not switch over to basketball. And of course, it was a wonky weekend with Indiana did not get Boogie Fland, which that story started breaking before Hoosier Hysteria. And I do not think that it was by any chance in Snowball's chance in hell an accident that was announced on Friday. I'm sure Calipari had something to do with that. But you have Hoosier Hysteria. Everything's great. And then until it's not, of course, over the weekend, one of Indiana's players arrested not on a non-alcohol related situation. It's kind of a silly situation, really. You're like, really? Come on, dude. And I'm sure he's going to get an ass kicking from one Mike Woodson, maybe for the next 3 months. But you said something at the start in the break, actually, about entitlement, but not, and I'll let you go on to that, but also the NIL only adds to that because these guys, these 5 stars, those are the guys that are getting the most NIL, the most attention, the most everything, right. And it only adds to that.
Well, there's no question, and I say this in not necessarily in Mackenzie Mbako's scenario. I don't know the young man at all at this point. I've talked to him briefly at the media day. I don't know much about his personality other than he had a great personality as a guy you talk to for the first time at media day. He's looks like a fun guy and all that kind of thing. But here's my deal, and it's not just Mackenzie Mbako. It's a lot of high ranked college athletes, no matter it's football, basketball, whatever sport. A lot of these guys have been entitled their entire lives because of their abilities as an athlete. And they get into a situation where things aren't going quite the way they think it should go. And the next thing you know, I become a stubborn, bullheaded guy. And I'm going to sit there until they do what I want them to do. Whatever the case, I have no idea how he handled this. Obviously it wasn't alcohol related because there were no charges in that regard. So it's not like he just I don't know what he was thinking. And I don't know that anybody will know what he was thinking other than him. But I know this, he got himself in trouble. Why would you ever resist arrest? In other words, if a policeman has stopped you and there is justification, and he was given all kinds of opportunities to leave.
15 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, the arresting officers basically said, just get out of here. We don't want to arrest you. and he just wouldn't budge. So I don't know what the issue was. All I know is when a policeman tells me to do something, I do it. And I've been stopped multiple times because of my heavy foot in my lifetime. And I have never disrespected an officer in any way, shape, or form. And I've never been treated badly by one because I didn't do that. I basically said, I'm at fault here, not a problem. I will do what you tell me to do. And that's what they have to do too. But I think because they have always been able to do whatever they've wanted in many respects. And I'm not saying he's a spoiled kid or anything. I'm just saying, I'm talking about in general now. You've got to make the right choices. And that was certainly not the right choice.
And I could see getting into an argument with someone at a fast food restaurant because you have this maybe have an air of superiority. I'm not saying I've never been upset at a drive-through in my life, but they had to bust the side window out of his vehicle because he wouldn't leave, wouldn't roll his window down. I'm like, yikes. But oh well. You've got to let's see, when does the Mike Woodson show start? You've told us before.
Here's what happens this week. We've got the talk show for Coach Woods or for Coach Allen on Wednesday night. I've been getting confused as we go along here. I've got Coach Woodson on Wednesday night at 7:05. On Saturday, we got the football game with Indiana taking on Penn State at State College. Then on Sunday, we've got Indiana playing the University of Indianapolis on the hardwood in the first exhibition game for Mike Woodson's ball club. And then on Monday, we've got our first talk show with Coach Woodson at 7:05 at the Chop Shop next Monday night.
Just a normal schedule for Don, just throwing some things in there. Don,
once we get into November, boys and girls, there's no time for anything but what we do. You know what I mean?
Trust you.
It's
absolutely. Work. And Don is heading straight out, making a run for the border right now. He's got to go.
Well, I told you guys I've never been to a Taco Bell in my life. I know everybody thinks that's hard to believe. I've never been to one.
Don, appreciate you, brother. We'll see you at the Chop Shop.
All right. Thanks, Jim. See you.
You bet. Don Fischer, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers, joining us here. Up next, Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hello.
How you doing, Jim?
Well, at least
better than
you.
Never mind.
You get to cover the Pacers at least.
I do.
So even though when's the regular season start?
Wednesday. We are rolling. I got my Tyrese Halliburton epic out today.
They
paper yesterday. It's on the.
They played 3 preseason games.
4.
Well, they've already played 4. What is their record right now? 1-4.
2
1 and 3 rather.
2
they
and
are
2.
2-2. I
yeah,
couldn't
they
remember.
won their 2 at home. They lost their 2 on the road. They won their 2 when Halliburton was playing and lost their 2 when Halliburton was not playing.
That's all you can ask. They're looking good though, even when they weren't. But did you have a breakfast burrito or anything?
I have eaten. No. We're on Taco Bell jokes this morning.
It's just too easy, man. I actually yesterday for breakfast I made breakfast tacos.
Nice.
Not even
celebration.
I had no idea. If I have a rare day off, which right now at least Sundays are still I consider off because I didn't have to go anywhere. Yeah, man, I didn't even look at my phone. And then somebody had texted me and said something. I'm like, okay, something happened. I'm like, God dang it. And I'm like, gee whiz. Yeah, that's
props to Zach for breaking that one. That's
absolutely Howie.
You gotta be ready, man. You gotta be ready for College Town Sunday morning. You just don't know. You got to check that police log on Sundays. I was never nearly as religious about it as I should have, but you have some stuff, man. All of a sudden something goes down and You know,
the irony,
I don't know.
Is that have to, I don't know, like, is it 4 years, 5 years? But if this last 5-year period, I think, have more basketball players been arrested than football?
Probably. I mean,
which is very unusual. You've got 85 scholarship football players and like 125 total. So it's not even fair to compare the two. But
I mean, I would say, first off, as far as who's got more, the worst sin, if you will, in the last 5 years has been committed by a football player. Or not has been committed, has been the worst accusation is against a football player.
Who is now playing in the NFL.
What's that?
Seconds, guys.
That's not who I was talking about.
Oh.
GarnishCatering.com. That's GarnishCatering.com. Garnish Catering is a proud partner of Wow Food Group.
Accusation.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, here on this Monday. It is October 23rd. Thank you so much for being with us. Joined now by our good friend Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star. Make sure you give him a follow at, what is your
Dustin Dopirak.
Just straight Dustin Dopirak at Twitter?
I'm
still calling it Twitter. And I'm going to call it Twitter. I'm not going to call it X. I'm calling it Twitter.
Yeah.
Until somebody sues me to say
eventually we're taking it back. We're all of us, Twitter people are running a
campaign.
I'm not going to use the word coup, but we're taking it back eventually.
Yes. So, running a coup over Elon Musk.
We're taking it back because
he'll put us all in a rocket and send us to the moon, probably. But yes, and be a subscriber. I am. I was thinking about this and talking about this with somebody the other day. One of the things I greatly miss is reading the paper every day in my hands, not on a damn screen, not on a phone, in my hands. Flipping it over, you pop it, boy, you get that crease in there, and you fold it.
This sounds like a very physical experience for you. There's a lot going on.
Well, there is, but it's boom. You got that. It's just.
I got it.
It's something I did from the time I was a freshman in high school, but I read more when it was actually the paper because you're scanning everything, whereas now it's their stories are over there, but it's just different.
Sure.
Screaming at the moon again, I guess, but not meaning to be. How was your weekend? Good.
I believe Pacers, he's crying at the moon.
Crying at the moon. The Pacers finished the regular season 2-2, I believe. We'll get Dustin back on there smoothly here in a second. As he pointed out in a break when I was speaking with him, they're 2-2 now. They have won the 2 games with Tyrese Halliburton, and they've lost the 2 without Mr. Halliburton. So that's kind of a good sign for the Pacers. They played well, actually, in the 2 losses, I believe, with one of those being very close. I can't remember the stats on that. But they're playing well. A little bit. You got the Colts that are just this close, but I think the Pacers are going to have a better year than what the Colts have had thus far. And of course, then we'll talk about who's going to have the better season between Purdue football's not going to make a bowl. IU football's not going to make a bowl game. So that's going to be a little bit ironic this year. Dustin Dopirak, how are you, sir? As he is still looking to get back with us. That's okay. Entitlement.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, it's lovely how we have a full-blown conversation with him while we're in the break, and as soon as we come back on the air, everything
Oh
Just
yeah.
flops
Well,
for us. It's fine.
That's just
That's
life.
live radio for you right there.
And that's life. That's how it goes this day or these days now. But what are your thoughts? You throw your comments in, and we'll be talking about what happened with IU football over the weekend. Was Purdue on a break? Were they on a bye? Because I do not recall seeing a score for them this weekend, although that is late in the year for a bye. They have the
Maryland was also on a bye this weekend, so it's
well.
Then
They probably were then. Maybe they were. That's a long time to go without getting a bye. But the Cornhuskers,
the season,
Purdue has to travel to Lincoln, Nebraska this weekend, who are 4-3, by the way. Can Matt Rule get Nebraska bowl eligible? Yes, he can, because they play in the Big Ten West. And what a story that would be. 2 games away from bowl eligibility. A home game against Purdue coming up, who is 2-5. So very good chance that they're able to do that.
And they do have
or get closer, I should say.
Their most likely chance of getting to 6 are their next 2 games. They have Purdue and then Michigan State. And then it gets tougher for them after that with Maryland, Wisconsin, and Iowa to finish the season. So, but it's definitely likely for them.
Yeah, but Iowa lost at home over the weekend to Minnesota. So you got that going for you, which is nice. Dustin, if you're there, just go ahead and speak up. But in Nebraska, I think they're going to become bowl eligible without question. I think they beat Purdue this weekend at home, and now they have to travel to Michigan State. I still think a winnable game. Michigan State is 2-5. Wisconsin on the road. Then they get Iowa at home. Boy, oh boy. Can you imagine if they're 1 game away from bowl eligibility with Iowa in that last game? Wisconsin, they're 1 game from bowl eligibility. So while we've made a lot of fun of the Big Ten West with good reason, Iowa bowl eligible already, Wisconsin 1 game from bowl eligibility, Nebraska just 2 games away from bowl eligibility with winnable games remaining. Maryland is 1 game shy of being bowl eligible. Rutgers became bowl eligible over the weekend with their victory over Indiana. So then you had the big game, Ohio State and Penn State. I took Penn State, not going to lie to you. And they didn't get it done. So their chances of making the college football playoffs pretty much out the window right now, in my estimation. I don't think you're going to get 2 teams from the Big Ten unless Ohio State runs the board, and they could still lose to Michigan because they have this thing on the front of their jersey that says Ohio State. Forrest asked me if I still think that Ohio State's not a top 3 team. I don't know that they are. There's a lot of we don't have the dominant teams that we normally have. Georgia has not shown me to be dominant. Michigan has looked that way, but has not played anybody. Literally. They've not played anyone. Now, they have dominated those teams that they have played without question, but I don't. It's a weird year in college football. Now, part of that, I think, or a big part of that is because of the transfer portal. So, looks like we've got Dustin back.
Hey.
How are you?
I don't know what happened. I'm doing all right. I don't know what happened there. That was odd. And I don't know why I'm darker on this my work computer. But anyway, where are we? What are we talking about?
Who knows? But we'll pick up. We'll go ahead and pick up and get out of the way. The college football over the weekend. Indiana, of course. Punt's another one, I guess, is the best word you can say, because that's the best part of their team right now. Their punter, James Evans, who
he got one blocked too, didn't he? NFL
ready. I mean, this dude he boomed 170 yards. He's the only bright spot on their team at the moment. They went with one quarterback for the game in Brendan Sorsby, who looked okay at best. But I'd like to ask the question, is that partly because it's not until game 7 that he comfortably was the only quarterback in the game? Had he been the quarterback getting all those reps from game 1 in week 1, what does week 7 look like? I have to think that not sitting on the bench half of that time and not running in and out sometimes would have been a major, major difference for that offense, with or without the change of OCs.
I mean, possibly you could go ahead and say the same thing about Taven Jackson, maybe. I mean, it's the same as anything else. Like, yes, at the end of the day, you're better off having one quarterback, getting all the rhythm and whatnot. But if you don't know who your quarterback is, you will end up giving them both opportunity to win it. And so in each of them will have a day where they don't look like they should be the starting quarterback, and each of them will have a day when they look like they should absolutely be the starting quarterback. And why did we ever think of anybody different? I mean, it happens that way. I mean, and especially it happens that way at Indiana. I mean, there have been several years where, like, a guy has a week and you're like, well, that's clearly the guy. Like, what's this coach been thinking about all this time? And then the next week you're like, not quite. That's not a sure thing either. And so that's the situation they've been in the last couple of years is not knowing who their quarterback ought to be. And last year had not a similar scenario, but Connor Bazelak was the guy, for a while, and then all of a sudden, when he gets hurt, eventually you get Dexter Williams in there, and you're like, well, why wasn't Dexter Williams a quarterback the entire time? But obviously there had to be reasons. But obviously the bigger issue is that it just hasn't been a good offense at all. And no matter who they've put in there in the last 3 years, it hasn't really mattered. I mean, again, they, a couple of years back, they had a guy who's now, at least until Saturday night when he didn't have a great night, was, the front runner for the Heisman Trophy. And obviously he didn't play particularly well that year. But, he spent all the, you knew Penix was going to be the guy and everything like that. But, it didn't run particularly well under him. So it's just, you're seeing just a lot of grand system failure. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I didn't, Penn State, Ohio State was on, and the Pacers practiced at 1:30, or got done with, practice and were ready for availability at 1:30. So I made those priorities on my Saturday. I mean, I only watched a little bit of Indiana Rutgers, but just seeing seeing the box score was kind of enough to say, okay, well, this one was not close, and this was Rutgers. We talked at the end of the year about, beginning of the year, like, man, are they going to be better off when they get, Penn State and Ohio State and Michigan off the schedule? But it's like, again, if you can't beat Rutgers and Maryland, you cannot complain about having to pay Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State. Beat the teams you're supposed to beat. Obviously Rutgers is having a pretty good year. That win puts them in postseason. But still, those are the teams you have to beat. And when you're getting throttled by those teams, you're just not competing with anybody at all. So that's the shape that they're in. And you could say, okay, well, what about this decision? What about that decision? Just across the board, it's not there. It's not like, oh, well, if they would have had Brendan Sorsby the whole time, if he had been playing for 7 weeks, maybe they'd be in a different place. Yeah, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe he would have done something that would have told you, man, this is definitely not the guy. Why didn't they start Taven Jackson? So, that's the kind of place they're in, is that there is not enough effectiveness, regardless of who goes in there, to be able to say, man, they would have been better off if they kept this one guy the whole time, because that one guy probably would have had one day where you're like, this guy can't, whatever. And maybe it's him, but maybe it's just the entire system is just not working.
We've got to get to a break after this, but regardless, they're in week 7, and it seems they have no idea what to do with the offense. Actually, in week 8, my apologies. You're going into week 8, and it's like being on a car ride that is halfway uphill and halfway downhill. halfway down the hill and you knew you had brake problems that you couldn't stop, but now you're still wondering, all right, so, hey, what are we going to do about these brakes? I don't know where they go from here, although they have games that would on paper be considered winnable. One is not. That's Penn State coming up next. Not by no way, shape, or form is that winnable, especially Penn State coming off of a loss to Ohio State. Then you've got teams that have played okay and have increased throughout the year, like Wisconsin. You've had teams that have at least showed some offensive output at times, in Purdue, Minnesota. Are they on? I think they're on the schedule. They just go to Iowa and win. It's just all downhill. And knowing that there's nothing that's going to be done, my biggest fear is a great exodus of players at the end of this season for Indiana.
I mean, it's almost like what is there to fear of that? You know, I mean, they're far enough along as far as just not having enough talent. I mean, like, how much worse can it be? I guess is really the question. You know, then, I mean, I guess they can be non-functional. But you know, yeah, they could certainly have that issue. I mean, they could have a pretty severe exodus. I mean, I think it's, you know, the writing is on the wall at this point, whether it's going to be this year or whether it's going to be next year. You know, obviously the buyout is $20 million. It goes down to $8 million next year. The question that you're asking yourself is, are you willing to pay that buyout? Really, can you find somebody to pay that buyout? They were obviously able to do it with Archie Miller. Can you find somebody else who's willing to shell out the necessary funds, or multiple someones to shell out the necessary funds to be able to make a move this offseason? Because I don't know how you keep it together. If you keep on this direction. And I thought Zach, had a really good piece, you know, just basically after Sunday, just kind of putting in words just how hopeless this seems to be at this point. You know, I thought, you know, there were a couple points I didn't necessarily agree with Greg Doyle on a column earlier in the week, but the broad strokes, I think, obviously kind of nailed the situation that they're in. It's just how much can you afford to stick with this? And I think, you know, it does, I think, again, you know, it is a reminder of coaching football is hard, man. It really is. And just because, like, you can have good coaches, smart people and whatnot, be successful and then not be successful. And, you know, you don't sort of know what changes. You know, Tom Allen's not a stupid guy. He works his butt off. He's a positive character and all that. But when it goes the wrong direction, it's hard to get it right. And they just, since 2021 went the opposite direction he was supposed to, they've just had a hard time getting it right. And they've just never been able to arrest that momentum ever since.
We'll be right back after this. Dustin Dopirak is with us. Plenty more.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market,
I had no clue what to do there.
It didn't play when I hit it at first. I was being a smart ass.
My apologies, guys. I don't know what happened. I was right there the whole time.
Oh, it's okay. I don't think you did anything wrong. I think just sometimes the internet doesn't want to cooperate.
Yeah.
So Michigan and Michigan State now have staffers suspended on football.
I'll be right back.
One was because he was a Green Beret Marine.
Was he a Green Beret?
No, I don't.
I knew he was a Marine, but I didn't know he was a Green Beret.
I just kind of actually that's the Army, I think, anyway. But I was just he was though he did work in like special ops, I believe.
He was in special ops. I only saw the beginnings of that piece, and I was like, okay, mostly because I've just been in a writing groove here.
Michigan State suspended a staffer for running a trivia question during the Michigan game, and the answer.
Oh
was
yeah,
Hitler,
that's not a football staffer.
No, it wasn't. Just a marketing staffer.
Not even I guess. I just know they had a release saying that there was a third party something that their third party company that they ran their trivia through. And yeah, it had Adolf Hitler on the big screen, when they were down.
Not good timing at the moment.
No, there's no good timing. There's not good timing.
Well, no, but of all times, this could not be a worse timing.
This is not number one, the worst possible time, but it's bad. Yeah, it's bad.
49 probably would have been a worse season to run that.
1949. I feel like the score is not the issue. I feel like if you're winning, you still don't want that up there.
No. I meant 1949, 48, 49.
Right.
That probably would have been a worse time to run that.
Okay. All right. I understand what you're saying. I thought you meant it when it was 49-0. No, it's not. You don't. At the time, they didn't have video boards, but there's never a good time. There's never a good time to have Adolf Hitler on the scoreboard. Just, it's a interesting trivia question, I'm sure. Where was he born? Whatever. But you don't know. Anything that requires you to put him on a video board, you don't do it. Even if you're asking the question for some stupid reason, like he doesn't have to be there. You don't have to see him.
All right, here we go, guys. Community. Choose from one of the gorgeous Stonecrest Signature Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Revesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Hank's Pizza Mac. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. It is Monday. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you. Thanks a lot for being with us, no matter where you are, listening on radio down in Evansville on 97.7 ESPN, The Ref, or call them our river rats, the region rats up in the northeast part, Hammond, Chicago, WJLB 104.7 FM, 1230 AM, over in Fort Wayne on Fort Wayne Sports Station, The Fan, 1380, or 89.1 down in southern Indiana, Marengo. Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star with us. Also, if you follow us on YouTube, don't forget to go there and sign up. It's free. And hit the like button and subscribe and all that stuff. They tell you to hit notifications toggle. I can't remember all this stuff. And make sure you give Dustin Dopirak a follow. If you're not, you're missing out, not just on Pacers coverage, but overall sports. He is a man for all seasons.
I have thoughts and takes on all the things.
And not only that, he has a backup that has thoughts and takes on all things. And Maxine, who is usually right more than
she's way more than me. She's got much better takes than me. Her tournament bracket did better than both mine and my wife's this season. So, take Maxine.
Well, I was just thinking maybe the bowl season will start with we have to start doing a different bowl tree. Yeah, Maxine's picks, Maxine's tournament picks.
She's not, she's not choosing one or the other.
Whatever she chooses first.
That's fair. She won't know what to do. She just hoover.
And we will keep track of that. That would be funny. Love to do that. The Pacers finish up the preseason 2-2, which is fine because they, as you pointed out in the break, they don't count, number one. But number two, the two games they lost did not have Tyrese Halliburton with them, which is good for the team to play without him. And didn't one of those games go? It was pretty close, if not both of them.
Yeah, they went to overtime in Memphis.
Yeah.
Entertaining. And obviously Memphis is playing without John Morant as well. So that, and they will be for the first 25 games of the year as he goes through his stuff. Just a lot of good things so far. I mean, I think there's some things I'm sure we're hoping to work on and be farther along at than they are at this point. But yeah, I mean, the offense has worked really, really well when Halliburton's been on the floor, and you can tell basically the new guys, love playing with them and they can get rolling. with him. They can really, really run, certainly, especially in the preseason. They've been able to do that. But obviously, Obi Toppin has been waiting for a point guard like this his whole life, just to be able to. He loves leak outs, loves running on the break. That's basically been his great talent as long as he's been playing. And, this really allows him to do that. The other night he got a fast break dunk. It was a pass from Matherin when he, put it between his legs on the break and dunked it. He's just got phenomenal athleticism and speed for a big guy. He's like a tight end running down the floor on the seam and just, throws it down with authority. And that's working out well. And he can also shoot it pretty well. So that's been a big addition. Bruce Brown did not have a great first and second game, but man, when he got on the floor with Halliburton, shooting was different because the shots were different. He got some open ones, and Halliburton just really kind of pushed it and kept it wide open. Basically it was a huge difference, especially in this last game on Friday, just how much better the starters played together than basically in the second unit. So they got a lot to where it would still work out with the second unit. They got to figure out just what their rotation is going to be like. I mean, if they're going to mix and match some, Andrew Nemhart missed the first 3 preseason games. He had a kidney stone, which was not fun, I'm sure. And so basically he and TJ McConnell were playing together in the second unit on Saturday or on Friday. Not sure if that's going to be the case when they play on Wednesday, if they're going to change these things around. Ultimately, it's going to be, there's still some moving parts for them. But a lot has started out well. I mean, I thought Tyrese, Halliburton created, I think, a lot of momentum with the way he played in FIBA, basically in the World Cup. He really did a good job, I thought, using Team USA's second unit and really pushing those guys with tempo and having them share the basketball a lot. And he seems to be really in a good place heading into this. When your best player is in a great place, that helps really a lot of the other guys. So things are looking up for them generally. But, obviously, I think there's still a team that's, on the edge of playoff contention team. There's a lot of questions still asked if this team can defend. They're coming off a season which they finished 29th in the league in points allowed. They were averaging 116 a game. They were giving up 119. So, they got to be able to guard people if they're going to finish. You got to be a 500 team generally to get in the playoffs. To be a 500 team, you got to score more than you give up. And so they got to cut down the number of points they give up because they can score. But so you hope Bruce Brown can defend. I think it's interesting. They don't necessarily have a second great defender on the first unit. And basically their next best defensive players are all on the second line right now. So we're going to see what they do to figure that out. But they're in an interesting place and a pretty good place going into the start of the season.
And to play off of that, this is not one of your pieces. It was Scott Horner from the Indy Star as well. But I just think it's pretty kind of neat. The Pacers, at least last year, were the second least expensive night out for a family of 4 to an NBA game, which that's pretty important, especially if you're taking 2 kids. But averaged out to be like $163 for the night, which I don't know.
It's tolerable in the days and age of this level of inflation. Yes, for sure. No, I mean, certainly if you can get them on StubHub, there have been a lot of games that you can that you are very much priced into. I guess it's not easy to get 4 tickets that way if you're getting, your spouse and 2 kids, but it is still very much a doable thing, mostly because, they've had a couple tough years. Obviously, the 2 seasons ago winning 25 games, last year they were still kind of on the edge there. They're, a team that doesn't get a lot of TV exposure, compared to some of the superstars in the league. But this is the time. I've got basically a novel in the paper on Halliburton. It was in the paper yesterday. It's online today. And, as far as superstars that you want to catch, while he's young and while it doesn't cost you a lot to see him, Halliburton's, high on that list. Basically, when Steph Curry comes down and LeBron James come to town and whatnot, the tickets get expensive. But I mean, you can watch Tyrese Halliburton play every night, and he's a fun watch just because of the way he elevates everybody, the style of play he creates because of how well they're passing the ball and whatnot. Considering league wide what it costs to see some of these guys. There is something to be said for, you're watching a guy turn into a star and also play a very fun style of basketball, very unselfish style of he's worth the price of admission. Obviously, everybody can decide, exactly how many, tickets you can buy for the course of the season and whatnot. $160 a night still ain't cheap at all. That's not something you can do. Not many people can do 40 times a year. But he's worth your once or twice. And if you can, and if it's for what it costs you to get in and see this guy, and see how he elevates the guys around him. Compared to what else in the league, it does say that, what kind of, sort of bargain is comparatively to the rest of, what it costs to see the rest of these guys.
Yeah. And this is a team that can win any night. That's the thing.
Yeah,
you're not going to watch a team that, well, we're going to go out and have fun. No, you can actually go and have fun because this team might win every night. I'm not saying they're going to, but they're going to have a shot to win every game they're playing.
Yeah, they're in the place that, like, there's nobody, and this was the case for most of last year when Halliburton was out. Obviously, it changes significantly when he goes down, when he sprained his elbow last year. They had 10 games and they only, without him, and they lost 9 of them. But yeah, you can put them on the floor with anybody in the league and they've got a shot. That doesn't mean they're going to be up there. I mean, I think Milwaukee and Boston are going to run away with the East. I don't see the Pacers being in that realm. I don't see anybody being in that realm. Certainly with Milwaukee adding Lillard and putting he and Giannis together. I mean, I think that's going to be a force. And then that opened up the opportunity for Boston to go get Drew Holiday. And so you stack Holiday on top of Tatum and Brown, and they also got Porzingis in the offseason. I mean, Boston looks like a force in the East. So I don't see the Pacers competing at that level. I don't see them winning 55, 60 games in an East that includes those teams. But I think 40, 41, 42, 45 is reasonable. And on any given night, they can beat Boston on a one-off. They can beat Milwaukee on a one-off. They did it last year. Even one with Halliburton not on the floor, they went up to Milwaukee and beat, a Milwaukee team with Giannis. They can do it. It is possible for them to beat, the best teams in the league. So do I think they're going to be a 50-win team this year? Probably not. But they're going to have a chance every night. There's not going to be a team that's going to run them off the floor entirely. They'll lose some games. It happens, but they're not going to be. It's not going to be a team that gets their doors blown off every night.
I like that Taterology. He says Twix is a new terminology being. We were earlier talking about X and Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Not bad.
That's fair.
Not bad. Hey, not bad. I kind of like that. Switching gears a little bit. I know that college football is not your beat right now, but I
still watch
pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still a Michael Penix guy. I'm still Michael Penix for Heisman. He played and beat Oregon. And yeah, they had a rough week last week, but guess what? What team has not had a rough week? They probably were a little lucky to get by Arizona State. But ironically, if you look back, they were pointing out the last time Washington lost was to Arizona State. Last time they lost when leading in halftime was Arizona State. Last time it was Arizona State. So
yeah,
and apparently Washington fans hate those purple helmets that they wore, which I thought that they looked kind of good, but that is not what the Washington fans want to see. But they win, they get by. Every team has had no team has had more ugly games than Georgia this year, but they have not been popped from that number one spot. Michigan has not played anybody of substance this year. And yeah, they are dominating those who they haven't played, but someone said that McCarthy's now the odds on. I think that's a load of crap. You haven't played anybody. Penix has played and beaten, not just played. He's put up video game numbers. Then he did the same thing against Oregon, though. He throws for 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. So no, there's no way in my mind he replaces him, but it's because of the names on the front of the jerseys. Now I'll have Mike DeCourcy on tomorrow, and I did see his post that he said, now anybody that does not think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best player in college football is crazy. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how you say that. I think he might be the best receiver, but I don't think that he is someone that dominates a game yet. They did beat Penn State, who is one of the best teams in the Big Ten has to offer. Now I wonder how good is even the top of the Big Ten. We don't know because Michigan has not played anybody. And that was the first time Ohio State really has, other than they played Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And they beat Notre Dame, who ended up losing to Louisville, but beat USC. It's, a tit for tat.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, a few things here. First off, I think what's cool about college football this year is I don't know that the top teams are as much better than everybody else as they have been recently, and I think that's good. I think parity in college football is
incredible.
That's on an upswing this year, and obviously it comes in cycles. You have these periods where it's like, okay, well, those teams are clearly better than everybody else, and it's not close, and that'll happen again. Within a couple of years, you'll see somebody. Maybe it'll be Georgia, maybe it'll be Ohio State or Michigan, maybe it'll be one of these Pac-12 teams when they move over to the Big Ten. It happens. Basically, you see these cycles. Obviously, and 4 or 5 years ago, you were like, man, nobody should even be bothered be playing except for Alabama and Clemson, because that's all it is. We're just basically waiting until these teams play together for the national championship, and then Clemson's fallen off and just got beat by Miami last night. I mean, there are for as much as there are constants generally, the top programs, the top 30 or so or whatever are sort of separated from everybody else. But you have Florida State's back in there. Florida State seemed dead not too long ago, and all of a sudden they're a top 5 team. You don't know who they're going to lose to. Again, Washington was barely anything not too distant past. There's a reason why Kalen DeBoer got that job, because it was open. But to look at this group, I mean, there's a lot that can still go on down the stretch, and the Heisman Trophy, race tends to be really formed by what happens the last 2 weeks. What happens after Thanksgiving, the weekend after Thanksgiving, and then in that championship week. I mean, you can get a lot done in that period. In some cases, because you know what? I mean, I was a voter. I'm not going to be a voter this year because I finally, they had to tell them I don't cover college football anymore. But it's tough when you are a voter, because you're generally covering your one team. You only get so much time to watch these guys outside of your job. You get to go watch highlights when you get back, but how much time do you get to spend watching film on other teams during the week? You don't, because you got to cover your team. You got to show up at practice. You got to write feature stories, got to chase news, like all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, and they all play at the same time. Basketball, you can at least watch a couple games during the week when the team you're covering isn't playing. You're always going to be more educated on who you think should win the Wooden Award, should be an All-American. Football, it's tough because you cover one team and that's your whole Saturday. So what happens is, toward the end of the year, if your team's out, the team that you cover is out, you get to really watch these players. And so a lot of times you're like, man, Bryce Young was off the charts good in that SEC championship game. That's my Heisman Trophy guy. That was the most important game of the year. He had the best night. He's the guy. And so a lot can still be determined then. And I mean, Michael Penix's best shot to make his case will be if they play in the Pac-12 championship game. If he has a phenomenal night, he's got a shot to win it. But Michigan still has to play Ohio State. If J.J. McCarthy has a phenomenal game against Ohio State and they blow their doors off and he beats Penn State the same way, then you see it. I mean, McCarthy might look fine right now, but he hasn't played Penn State or Ohio State. He will. That's when you get to make your case. They don't hand out the Heisman Trophy on October 23rd. They don't. They hand it out in the middle of December, and there's still a lot of games left to be played. If Washington still has USC, Utah, Oregon State, and Washington State, and Stanford left on the board. Stanford, he'll probably throw for 500 yards. But, those last 4 games, are a big deal. I mean, I don't think USC's got a great defense. I saw them play, I went to the Notre Dame game for fun, and, that team gets pushed around on defense, but they got them helmets. I mean, people are going to see great game against USC, and you see, him on TV throwing it all over the place against, Garnet and Gold. You're like, hey, that elevates him. He's got a shot to move up. Obviously he could still lose it if they have a bad game against Utah. Utah's a great defense. If he still throws for, if he beats Utah, that's a nice looking win. That defense is tough. That made life hard on Caleb Williams. It has for years. So, again, there's a lot more opportunity for him to make his case. There's a lot more to go on here going forward. I mean, if Washington runs the table, they're in the playoff. That's not even a question. Sure thing, basically. And so if Ohio State and Michigan, if Penn State doesn't beat Michigan, then and basically those two teams go into the last week of the regular season undefeated. Whoever wins is who gets in. That's just how it's going to be. And if Georgia runs the table and they beat, I presume, either Bama or LSU in the SEC title game, they're getting in. That's all it comes down to. And it's just a question of who do you pick, Oklahoma or Florida State, if those two teams are on the table. If you end up with 5 unbeaten at the end of the year, which you could, Washington has an advantage, Michigan, Ohio State have an advantage, and Georgia have an advantage just by being who they are, being what leagues they're from. But he's in fine shape. If Michael Penix runs the table and goes undefeated, he's got a real good shot at winning the Heisman. He definitely didn't lose it last night playing at Arizona State. There's a lot of opportunity to get himself back in it. He probably felt, if you see, Heisman trackers today, he might not be on front of it. He did have 2 picks. He did not look great, but it's October. I mean, maybe they'll
only one of those picks, and really only one of those picks was his fault. That one got tipped,
Sure.
and he didn't. I don't know that he fumbled that ball. If the running back fumbled the ball, so it's I mean, Plus, he played a 10:00 game, so nobody saw it.
I stayed up, and I don't know why, Jim. I know if you did too.
I was watching it. Well, at least part of it. I did not see the end of the game.
This gets us on the sickos committee for the week, Jim. I think if we were up, I stayed up until 2. I shouldn't have. I was just like,
oh wow, you did. See, now you beat me. I didn't. This time I didn't finish. Last time I did. This time it wasn't on purpose, but I dozed off.
I stuck it out. I should not have stuck it out. I wanted. I mean, I was like, is number 5 going to go down? I gotta know. I was like, just waiting. It was
such a long weekend with Friday night being Gucci Mane night. And oh man, I wish I would have sent this picture to. I had to go to the eye doctor Friday, and while I was there, I was waiting for something. I looked over, and they had this Gucci display or whatever. I'm like, oh, I got to do this, and so I had them open it up, unlock the case, and give me some Gucci sunglasses out. And
nice.
Gave him one of those to get ready. But
there you go.
I did hear the Gucci Mane live. So was there for that. And what people have to understand, that is, if you're saying, oh, that's not it, that ain't for you. It's for the kids, man. It's for the players, for the kids, for the students. That is what that is about. And you've got 20 games now, actually probably 22 with the exhibitions, to go back and hear dun, 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 dun. If you want to hear all that, it'll be there all year long. Especially it seems like during warm-ups when they are playing the DJ, they have a DJ there. When the DJ's playing he could be playing something AC/DC or something. You're sitting there just, and all of a sudden about 4 bars into it, it comes up like, oh man, come on. But anyway, a little bit before we get out of here, Indiana football obviously had a bad weekend. Indiana basketball had a bad weekend. Not only did they not get Boogie Fland on Friday, I'm convinced that there was no way that was an accident. That is the day that he announced that. I would, if I was a betting man, I would bet that John Kelly probably might have said, "Hey man, you know what? Friday would be a good day to announce that."
I could see that. Yeah.
I mean, he is that smart. I'm serious. So there was that, and then of course there was
something happened at Taco Bell. Yeah,
something. Somebody did not get the tacos they wanted. Didn't come out crispy, or whatever the case was. There was an incident there. No alcohol involved, so it wasn't. Sounds like it was just stupidity, and I don't want to assume things. I know that 5 Left said that there are different things that could have gone on. But from all indications, if everything is correct of what I've heard, he was asked to leave multiple times, then asked to leave multiple times by the Bloomington police, which I got to tell you, if a police officer is giving me a shot to get the hell out of someplace, I'm gone. I am gone. You do not have to ask me twice if you're going to give me that opportunity. Well, not only did that not happen, what ended up having to break out a side window to get him out of there. That's the bad part.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what. I mean, first off, I feel like if as much as you want somebody off the property, if someone's in a parking space, I got questions about breaking his window. But I don't know. I mean, my biggest thing is I have many more questions than I have takes right now, as far as
exactly, because I was not there, and there's always 3 sides to a story.
There is, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, again, if there was not alcohol involved at 3 a.m. at Taco Bell,
that really made me shake my head right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, at that Taco Bell, I'm pretty sure it's the Taco Bell in downtown, I'm presuming. My go-to. What's that?
It's off the 3rd Street, I thought. Which that's the one over on the east side of town, right?
That seems weird. I don't know. I mean, I just naturally presumed it was the one.
As would I have.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'm wrong. Bottom line, I don't understand what I feel like there's more to it. I mean, I have questions about his state of mind, all those kinds of things. I mean, like if I'm Mike Woods and I don't go in this thinking you're suspended, you're this, I'm mad at you. I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? And so I don't know. I have no idea what was. I'm not even begin to pass judgment on this because I'm just like, okay, this is a bizarre scenario, and I don't know what was going on. What was really the deal? Because when you read it and you're like, okay, well, not a lot in here makes sense. Like, what are you doing, cussing out Taco Bell employees at 3 a.m, man? They're working at Taco Bell.
I'm never going to judge somebody for cussing out Taco Bell employees. I said earlier in the day,
that's hating,
I will
man.
say,
if you got the 2 a.m. shift at Taco Bell in Bloomington on a Saturday night, you are doing the Lord's work, sir, and not one single person should give you anything. I don't care what. I don't care if you messed up somebody's order. It's 3 a.m. on Saturday in Bloomington. Like you are fueling things. People, you are keeping people going. Like I am never like I will gladly take my I don't know, 2 tacos and nachos.
Well, I will say that Taco Bell for me has always had the absolute, not this one, all have always had the slowest drive-through service on the planet. But
it takes a while to make the magic happen, Jim. I don't know what.
Maybe so. If
you want first-rate fast food tacos, just you got to give it time. I'm sorry, you just do. But yeah, I will never cuss out any. Well, first off, any food service employee who's still working at 2 o'clock and is feeding me after I've left the bar. I'm gracious and thankful for your service. First off. So I don't know what went on there. I guess the bottom line is we don't know what went on there. Again, if he wasn't drinking, that raises a whole lot of, it raises more questions than answers.
No alcohol involved. Yeah.
So, there's a lot going on there. And obviously a lot has to be seen, determined, like if Mike Woodson's, looking into this, the first thing he's just got to do is sit down and say, okay, son, just tell me what happened. Don't, I'm not coming at you guns blazing, explain to me how this.
Absolutely.
So, I don't want, cast no aspersions, I'm afraid to make any jokes because I'm just like, okay, it's like almost when something like this happens, you're almost like, okay, well, there's some dark explanation for this that's tougher than you want to know about. So waiting to see everything that comes down in line. Just props to Zach Osterman for doing fine beat work on Sunday morning. When you're on the college beat, every once in a while, your Sunday gets railroaded by what a college kid did late on a Saturday night. It happens. You got to check that police log just to see what went on. And, Zach was all over the case. So salute to my Indy Star teammate.
And we'll talk to him on Friday when he joins. Just not that I want to drag that out and want to keep rehashing stuff because
Zach will have thoughts though. He knows more what's going on. Zach is clued in.
He is the man, so he got it. So we definitely do that, brother. What's up next for you?
Got another one cooking on Obi Toppin. It should run this week. So got a lot more long form stuff to do. But
highlight reel, baby. The highlight reel.
Doing all of our big preview stuff. Go check out my Tyrese Halliburton piece on the site this morning. So had a lot of fun writing that one. Just sort of digging into Tyrese the person, how he basically the human being Tyrese Halliburton has a lot to do with the player Tyrese Halliburton, and how that is the grander thing that the Pacers are investing in, making him a max contract guy. So come check that out.
Absolutely do that and be a subscriber. Keep Oakland Papers alive. I am. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jim.
Thanks for Dustin and Maxine here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
For those of you listening on YouTube, make sure you go to YouTube, hit like, subscribe, and toggle notifications, please, especially the subscribe part. It helps us immensely because I know most of you listen when it's not live.
I'm going to clean this up,
great.
by the way, in terms of the way that it's worded.
Well,
I'll
you
put
clean
it back up there.
Well, actually, there was another one that disappeared, so I think. But yeah, clean that thing up. Clean that up. Let's see. Renata had said something. I wanted to get that about. I lost it. Renata wanted to ask, and we'll wait till we come back, understand how it quickly escalated from please leave to busting out a window and pulling him out. Well, it wasn't quickly, for one thing. Again, I was not there, but from all that I have gathered, that he wouldn't leave the drive-through lane, for one thing, because he was not getting served, because he allegedly had cursed out and been rude to employees, and they were not going to serve him. And so he would not leave the drive-through lane. And then the police were called, and for 15 minutes, they did get him to pull out of the lane, out of the drive-through lane and into a parking spot, where for the next 15 minutes, they just tried to get him to leave. And at one point, he did start to leave and stop, put his car in reverse, backing back into a parking spot, would not roll down the window. And then that's what happened next. We'll talk to Zach on this more Friday. I'm sure he is researching it a little bit more so than we are. It was his story, so we'll let him do that. But that is what I know that Five Lefts mentioned something about, to my knowledge, no weapons were ever drawn, just a baton. There has been nothing about weapons being drawn on the case. And I've got to say, if it turns out to be that the police were trying to get him to leave for 15 minutes, and then he started to leave and pulled back in, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? But we'll have to get all the story. So there's that.
All right. Let's come back in.
And everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home, or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Rusty Gator. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Monday, and looking over our college pick'ems for the weekend. For those of you that are involved in that, you can just go to the ESPN and over to the fantasy tab down to College Pick'em 2023 and look for ISB's Pick'em. Indiana Sports Beat. I had another second of the season, a 5-5 run. Not good. That'll bury you. I did get Memphis over the UAB Blazers, but I took the Penn State Nittany Lions over Ohio State. And that did not work out well for me. I also took Iowa at home. Damn. And they lose 12-10 to Minnesota. 22 total points scored in that game. That's 3 points less than I can't remember Kirk Ferentz's son's name, but who is the offensive coordinator, who has a caveat in his contract this year that Iowa must average 25 points a game. I think they're averaging like 12. I'd have to look that up, but there was only 22 total points scored in that game. But Iowa loses at home. I lost West Virginia. I'm like, are you kidding me? They let the Oklahoma State Cowboys score 48 in Morgantown. I thought I had this one right, but Toledo goes to Miami of Ohio and beats them. I did get the Texas San Antonio Roadrunners over FAU. I did get Ole Miss over Auburn. I did not get the Utah Utes over USC, who is now 6-2. Caleb Williams' Heisman hopes, they have to be pretty much completely dashed at this point. I lost out on Clemson at Miami. I took the Hurricanes, and Clemson, done for them. They are 4-3. They'll probably still get bowl eligible. And then I got the Georgia State Panthers, but that's bad. In the group, holy moly, Bill Overman's still at the top by a game over Andrew Jones, who is just continues to stay up there. Went and saw Andrew actually at the Tarver Family Eye Clinic last week, and the girls there, Mackenzie and Amelia, hooked me up with the just let me wear the Gucci glasses, by the way. And when I was handing those back, I said, how much are those, by the way? These are $5.59. I'm like, oh, thank you very much. Justin, he's right there, tied with Andrew. Dave Martin, just a game back. Jason Spiegel tied with Dave, as is Caleb. Then a game back to Fred. Jason W. up in Fort Wayne. You guys are tight right there, Mike. Or Mark. And then Bill Evans. So it's tight at the top. You guys are close, man. But a 5-5 week just dropped me. Well, it didn't drop me terribly far. I'm in a tie for 17th, which is only not that far down. 49-31 on the year for me. Bad week. Oh, that hurts. Hurts, I tell you. Indiana this week travels to Happy Valley. That can just be ugly. You've got Penn State at home coming off of a loss to Ohio State. They need to make some hay with the voters. Is the new poll out yet? Be curious to see how far they dropped. Not a lot of change, I think, at the top. Is going to be. There was an upset this weekend.
North Carolina went down this weekend.
Oh,
lost
yes.
to
Virginia. A 1-5 Virginia team.
Penn State went down 3 spots, by the way. They're now number 10.
Yeah, see, that's manageable. Brian Ferentz, thank you, Philip. Appreciate you. Yeah. And so what happens in Iowa when the head coach's son has a contract, which I am all for this, by the way. And I have to ask, all of these contracts that have all of these bonus clauses. Well, if you do this, you get this. If you do this, you get this. If you do this, you get that. And if you go 6-6 and you're average, well, you get a whole nother year added to your contract. But what about if you don't go 6-6? What about if you don't get to a bowl game? What about if you have consecutive losing seasons? What about if, whatever? Why does it only work one way and continue to put you when you do that, you continue to put yourself in harm's way. You make it much more difficult on yourself. I mean, how many of you have a job that gives you potential bonuses if you do this? And while it may not say if you don't do this, which is below, you're going to get fired, it just goes without saying. If you suck at your job, probably not going to be there long, are you? If you are not producing in your job, probably not going to be there, are you? That's how it is in real life. And I don't understand why coaching is different. If you have a sport, and I'm not talking about any particular, I'm not talking about any sport particular, any coach particular. But why would you not put in provisions both ways? Why do you not protect yourself? Why do you not protect your own investment? If you don't, you're just giving away to the store. Well, if you're better than average, we're going to give you the moon. If you're below average, we've got to pay you millions and millions of dollars to get rid of you. It makes no sense to me, especially if you are a program that does not have a lineage of success, especially if you're a program that has shown it's hard to do it here. You can give them the caveats to succeed. I'm cool with that. No problem. But there has to be an equalizer. If you cannot do this, and I'm not talking necessarily in the first 3 years of your tenure at a place, but once you've been there, even a second contract, it has automatic extensions. There should be automatic reductions. I would love for someone to explain to me why. Well, you're afraid to lose some. Really? You're afraid to lose someone who has been below 500? Afraid to lose this? What is it you're afraid to lose?
Speaking of being afraid, Tom Allen is afraid that the season is slipping away. Do you want to hear his thoughts from this? Since we're all kind of on that topic right now.
Thank you, John.
Let's go ahead and let's hear what he had to say.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. You know, I don't think I feel it. I think it's a reality that you get to this stage of the year and you've got several losses now in a row. It's tough reality. So that's where you don't hide from it. You got to address it head on, and you got to really work hard together to help you guys. And so we got to do a better job as coaches, make better calls, and put them in a better position. And then those guys got to finish as well. So it's all this together, and we're all locked arms, and we're all in this together. It's what we are. It's what we do. And you just continue to teach how to handle challenging times and how to handle a chance to put the stake in the ground and change momentum. It's what we need to do. We obviously got another opportunity next week, which is what we're facing, and on the road again. But at the same time, it's about us right now being able to band together and continue to battle. And so we're going.
We'll go ahead and end it right there. But
Yeah, I mean, pretty much what we've heard all day. And John, did I miss a break? Or are we good?
Oh, I mean, you didn't miss a break, but you still need to hit one.
Oh, that's going to be kind of tough to do. No, that's right. We've got to hit a quick break. I forgot we're long. We started later today. Perfect. Hey, let's take that quick break. We'll come back and finish it out. Thanks a lot for being with us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you live from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. You should have at least laid your thoughts out on that before we went to break, but I know you weren't aware of the time. So,
well, I'll do that when we come back. Just I wanted to get to the break just because I knew we had to, and well, these Mondays always screw me up. Just for you, those listening. It's just a little bit different of a later starting time, the way we have to do things on Monday to make everything work, and it always screws me up because my brain is so used to looking at the clock and saying, "Okay, we got to do this, got to do that." Well, Philip, the government money is not going to athletics. Athletics is funded by athletics, the Big Ten Network.
I want to address
something real
quick too in the comments.
I was getting ready to say yada, 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 but how is whoever's using it, they're using yada, 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 is yada, 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 a registered phrase?
All right, while you're doing that, I'm bringing up Renata's comment because I feel like I kind of fit into this category, at least in a way. She says the diehard Tom Allen supporters are turning against him. I don't like the phrase turning against him because that makes it sound like you're heading toward him with torches and pitchforks.
Yes,
but it's one of those things where the people who are
acknowledging reality.
People are, yes. And
damn it,
I did fit into that category of thinking that things were going to work out with Tom Allen, but it's starting to the fruit.
How long ago has it been? How long ago has it been that you still believe that?
I mean, I believed up until really the Akron game this season was the first time I was like, okay, maybe things aren't really changing, because I thought things looked really good in the game before that against Louisville, and I thought that they were a bowl eligible type of team after that game. I thought Louisville was pretty good, and they still might be. But here's what I think you've said it already, Jim, and then we'll be back from break in a second. But this team has talent, and they are not being coached correctly. That's the current state of this football program.
But that's been the case for a long time. As a matter of fact, it was only the case one time, and that's when Kalen DeBoer and Kane Womack were coordinators.
All right, here we go.
At Indiana. For just $299. That's better than a birdie. But you don't have to be a student to play at Eagle Point. Go online to set your tee time or call 812-824-4040. The Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, everybody, to Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Monday, October 23rd. Cannot thank you enough for being with us. Don't forget our friends down in Southern Indiana, Clarksville. Bubba's 33 in Clarksville, right off of I-65 there at Veterans Parkway. Pizza, burgers, beer. 51 TVs in there. Great place to catch an IU game. Talking about Indiana is just in a horrific situation football wise. And I've got to be honest. When this hire was made 7 years ago, I thought that was a horrific mistake, but they had some success. You had Kalen DeBoer and you had Michael Penix. and Kane Womack. You had people that knew what they were doing on each side of the ball, and probably with enough conviction to say, no, this is how it needs to be. It's not about liking Tom Allen, you'd be an idiot to not like him as a person. He's just one of the greatest people I've ever been around, and that's fine, but that is not part of this particular discussion. And I hate to have that discussion, but it is what it is. I'm not here to wave pom-poms, but it has been obvious to me that when you say, this person's just going to be the offensive head coach, I'm just, turning around, that says, you know what, I'm having nothing to do with it because I don't really know enough to do. That's not a good sign, because there's too many times, too many situations where you need to be involved when you need to know, like fourth down call against Louisville, for example, just for something recent. But hiring Walt Bell, not firing Darren Hiller. It's just that there have been so many decisions not made that were made that have showed over and over that's not about winning. And Indiana just has to decide what they're going to do. Now, have they screwed themselves right now? Yeah. And I've mentioned, is there any possibility, has there ever been a school that has been in such a shape that they were able to reach a negotiated buyout with a coach, even though he had a higher buyout? It would be dumb on the coach's part. Can't do anything. I mean, especially with Tom Allen, he's not going to give you a Mel Tucker situation where Michigan State thinks that they may have an out of paying the 75 or whatever 70 million it is. But right now, Indiana has to go through an entire another season of this before they can even dream about. And I don't think that they'll have to get somebody else to come up with the money. It drops to like $7.8 million. They would be able to pay that. They can pay that out of the Big Ten money. That's something they'd almost be forced to do, in my opinion, if things don't change. And I don't know how they could possibly change that much. If you get into a situation where they actually do win 6 games next year, that automatically extends the contract, extends the buyout, extends everything else. Are you then just extending mediocrity? Buddy, there's just so much there to get to. Not having a quarterback ready to go this year, not getting a veteran quarterback out of the portal, not being able to retain Jack Tuttle or what went to Bowling Green.
I want to say something about that, about the retaining Jack Tuttle. I don't see how that would make much of a difference. Jack Tuttle did fine in a few games with Indiana, especially the Wisconsin game in 2020, but he lost the battle to Connor Bazelak last year. He proved that he wasn't good enough to be Indiana's starter already.
That was made by that decision was made by whom? Tom Allen and
the decision for him not start.
Yes. That decision was made by Tom Allen and Walt Bell, who one of those guys is not here because they were in the same exact situation this year.
Yeah, but Tuttle still got snaps last year, and Tuttle's didn't show that he was.
Dude, Tuttle's the number 2 quarterback at Michigan.
Okay, and that doesn't mean anything though. He's not doing anything. He hasn't taken meaningful snaps at Michigan.
Well, because J.J. McCarthy is the starter, and there's no reason for him to take meaningful snaps. But to be the number 2 guy at Michigan, that says a lot to me. They're the number 2 team in the country.
I think it's because he's a reliable player. He showed that he could do good things at Indiana. That doesn't mean he's worthy of being a starter anywhere at the Power 5.
If you're number 2 at Michigan, you're good enough to start at Indiana. If you have protection. If you have a line that will protect you. And that was obviously a case because what happened midway through last season? The offensive line coach was finally fired after 2 years of moaning and groaning that he needed to be fired. So that finally happens. You couldn't keep him healthy because you couldn't protect him.
1 minute.
So I just, there's so many things that all play into each other. But boy, we could go on all day about it. I cannot thank everybody enough. Come back tomorrow. Let's do it again. Mike DeCourcy will be with us. Fran Fischer on tomorrow as well.
That's
Talking
right.
some hoops, baby. I forgot about that. So Fran Fischer will join us along with Mike DeCourcy, Chronic Hoosier. So another big day tomorrow. So make sure you're here for all that. If you follow us on YouTube, make sure you go hit the subscription button. Costs you nothing. Notifications toggle and the like button. We appreciate you guys. Cannot thank all of you enough. Without you, we have no reason to be here. Big thanks to Greg for being with us today. Don Fischer, of course. Dustin Dopirak. John, the producer, for keeping us between the white lines. Until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.